Hello, geeks and ghouls. I finally watched Last Night in Soho, my most anticipated movie for 2021. No, it was not Dune. No, it was not The Eternals, because of course not. No, it was Last Night at Soho, the Edgar Wright movie, because I'm an Edgar Wright fan and I was looking forward to his thriller movie. And since we're talking thrillers and horror, let me plug Served Cold, which is an anthology, a horror tube anthology. It's currently in pre-order. It has been edited by Regina Sinclair of Regina's Home Library and Steve Donahue, and it's on pre-order. It's coming out on December 12th. There's a link below if you want to support it. There's stories by a lot of your favorite horror tubers and other tubers, and also yours truly. So give it a go. So now I have plugged myself and a project I'm in. Let's get to the movie because this movie was really interesting to see. You see, Edgar Wright is mostly known for his kinetic comedy in movies like Son of the Dead or Hot Fuzz or Scott Pilgrim. It's Against the World to Verse the World. Or Scott Pilgrim, the comic adaptation. And he recently went for a more standard movie, a non-comedy movie like Baby Driver, which also featured a lot of his trademark kinetic direction and sort of editing, and it was sort of a heist movie musical. It was really interesting. Now he's coming with a horror movie, a supernatural horror movie that many people say it's a giallo, and I didn't felt like it was giallo. Yes, there were some parts with Suspiria coloring with red, blue, green lighting in a room, and there was this sense of mystery, of intrigue, of decadence, of nightlife and decadence, and also some spooky stuff. But it felt more like a supernatural ghost story movie rather than a giallo. It had some elements though, but that's pretty much nitpicking. Let's talk about the movie. Actually, I think that movie, Last Night in Soho, it's in or at Soho, whatever. Last Night in Soho is an interesting movie about nostalgia culture. And when I say nostalgia culture, I can say it. I am meeting Zoomers who are like the 80s were the perfect dates because they have seen Stranger Things. They have probably seen some retrowave visuals on YouTube, and they're like, the 80s were awesome. And yeah, that's more like an ideal of an era they have. Right, I was born in the 80s, but I lived mostly throughout the 90s. My childhood was in the 90s, alright? And I'm pretty sure that the 80s low-key sucked. There were some interesting parts. The movies and the music were kind of cool, but yeah, I don't think the 80s were great. But here, this is something that this movie does. And alright, instead of a Zoomer idealizing the 80s, we have a Zoomer idealizing the 60s. You see, we have Eloise, played by Thomasin McKenzie, who wants to go study fashion in London, and she has a fixation with the 60s. She has also lived a very sheltered life because she's a psychic. She can see ghosts. And we learn this early on. Her grandmother warns her that you should try and control it because your mother did not and she killed herself. So we have this tension already, and Eloise is fascinated with 60s London, with the music, the fashion, and she goes to a fashion school in London, and she's going to a student home, only to find out that her roommate is not that likable, and she has to run away. She has to go find a nice little room in a small house in Soho, where there's a very strict landlady, and while there, she is visited by the memories of Sandy, played by Anya Taylor-Joy, who was a starlet of the 60s. And she was in Soho, she was trying to be a singer, dancer, performer. She meets Jack, who is supposed to be a manager, but he's not a manager. And Matt Smith is playing this guy, and yes, there were all-round solid performances in this movie. So I won't say that alright, Anna Taylor-Joy did a great performance as Sandy, but the cast was throughout very good, very solid. And Eloise is living through the memories of Sandy, and initially she's fascinated by her. She tries to imitate her confidence, her sexuality. She changes her hair, her dressing style, so she looks like her. And actually, this makes an impact. She manages to be noticed by people because of that. However, the memories of Sandy keep turning darker and darker as she sinks deeper and deeper into the seedy underbelly of the 60s Soho, and Eloise is haunted by visions of the man she beds to initially to get a career and then to make a living, because Jack is not a manager, he's a pimp, as you can understand, and she's haunted by faceless men, and it starts to get very dark. And of course, these visions start to meld into her everyday life. Yeah, that's pretty much all I've got to say about the plot of the movie. This is most of the things you'll find out yourself watching the trailer. I mean, there are parts of the trailer that cover the ending, come to think of it. But yeah, it's the trailer is quite good at getting you where the movie is, what the movie is about, without spoiling too much. So yeah, that all was good. I was waiting for this movie since I first saw the trailer, because I'm a fan of Edgard Wright, and I have to say that I have mixed feelings. Before going to the movies, I watched the review by Emma from Spooky Astronauts, and I noticed that she was a bit hesitant about it, and that was a big, big warning for me. And I haven't seen Chris Stackman do a review, and his policy now that he's only doing reviews for movies he likes. So I was like, maybe he watched it and didn't like it. They are the two YouTubers I watch for movie reviews. So yes, I was a bit hesitant because I like Edward Wright, but there are movies of his like End of the World that I did not particularly enjoy. I think that's his only movie I enjoy, and I was not a big fan of Spaced too, the series he did before going to the movies. But I really do love his directing style, and here it was a bit weird because the first 15 minutes of the movie, I won't go into spoilers, alright? Maybe I'll go into spoilers towards the end of this review, so don't worry about it, alright? So the first 15 minutes, I noticed that the direction was very steady, very slow. And it was really alienating because it's an Edgar Wright movie. Everything should be fast cuts and transitions and people running around and very kinetic. And it was kind of slow. But then again, I get why this happens because that's the beginning. That's where Eloise is. She's at her grandmother's place and she feels safe and everything is static. And then as we go into London and she starts to realize what is happening, that things are not as innocent as they're supposed to be, as she imagines, as there is a line repeated throughout this movie by various characters, and it is London can be quite a lot, I think, or something similar. The direction starts to be faster, there are more cuts here and there. There is some very subtle comedy, mostly by using transitions. There are a lot of comedy transitions. There is a lot of juxtaposition, cuts, etc. So yeah, it feels a lot like an Edgar Wright movie, which is great. And I'll get back to the director's style a bit later because it comes to play into my total view of the movie, how I feel about the movie. Then we go into the transitions to the past as Eloise goes into the life of Sandy, and oh boy, it's a sight to behold. Those transitions between the two characters, as you saw the trailer and you see that Eloise walks into a club and sees Sandy the mirror, and then they're the opposite, or how effects are used and CGI is used to denote this change between realities is just awesome. It feels amazing, and the pacing really picks up. There's a lot of great cuts, and you get a very clear storyline by using a very dynamic editing patterns, very dynamic direction. It's Edgar Wright, all right? That's what he does best, and here he delivers in spades. And as the reality starts to fall apart, you have the direction reflects that, and it feels great. The direction was great, very spot on, one of the best parts of the movie, along with the performances. I felt like this movie was it was following the steps of movies about aspiring creators, aspiring artists, aspiring actresses, singers, etc., going into the dark world of Hollywood or fashion, whatever, and losing themselves. Movies like The Neon Demon or Black Swan, who are much more surrealist in their approach. And here I think that Edgar Wright takes this core idea, this core concept, and ties it to a very straightforward storyline. And I feel that like Baby Driver did the same for it was basically Drive only with a storyline you could follow, which is great. I really appreciate when an author makes an effort to create a story that is easy to follow. I'm basic like that, right? So that was really good, and I think that the storyline was very easy to follow, very straightforward. Things were set up properly, and they came into play. However, as I was in this movie, and especially in the second act of it, I started to notice that the main story was very basic. And to me, it felt like the direction was lifting up a very average and safe script. And something that was done great but didn't help in that aspect is that there is a great use of red herrings in this movie. There is a red herring I took hook, line, and sinker. And yes, this didn't help because I was like, the story is very basic and predictable. And also, at the back of my head, now in retrospect, I was like, this doesn't make sense. There was this nagging suspicions of, of the storyteller that says, this doesn't make sense. I was not sure of that. I was just watching the pictures. And I was like, yeah, it's the storyline is not working. The story is not lifting its weight. So I felt like there was great direction that was lifting up a very basic ghost story or psychological thriller, take it as you want. And also, I felt like the very basic story was dragging the direction back. So I was a bit about it. But in retrospect, it works. There is a nice twist towards the ending that explains a lot of my this nagging suspicion. I didn't feel it was very dramatic. It was interesting. It was when Edgar Wright decides not to go safe and rock the boat a little because the movie overall feels very safe. And it feels very safe from a director who is not safe in his career choices. I think his safest movie to date was supposed to be Ant-Man, but he never filmed that movie, and that's a waste. I mean, his script is makes Ant-Man one of the most fun MCU movies. To me, Ant-Man is an underrated MCU movie because the script was it was screaming Edgar Wright, and it's a shame he didn't film the movie. And when he was missing from the movie in Ant-Man and the Wasp, we can see that the quality is down the dumps. But yes, his movies never felt safe, and this feels safe. There are some great touches here and there, but the core of the story is just, even with the twist in the ending, it feels very safe. I feel love the visual aspects of it. Definitely love the direction and the way it's edited, the special effects. Anya Taylor-Joy was great as Sandy. I think she was really exceptional as Sandy because Sandy was such a fascinating character. And Eloise was also, she was more like a point of view character. So it's probably not as, not as She's not supposed to be stealing the scene. She's supposed to be a wallflower, an innocent that leaves the dark side through Sandy. And yeah, I still have some things. I mean, should we go into spoilers after that? Yes. If you like stylish thriller movies and you're down for a good ghost story with a couple of decent jump scares and a sense of loss of reality, definitely go watch this movie. It's a sight to behold. Don't expect to have your mind blown away, alright? But it's far better than a lot of the horror movies coming out today. I mean, I've seen some lackluster movies this year I have not reviewed yet. Probably should get down to reviewing more horror movies because I have seen quite a few of them. But I mean, yeah, should we talk disappointment? I've watched Candyman. That was a disappointing movie. No, this one is actually quite good. It's really interesting. It won't be a classic, but it's definitely a movie worth watching, especially for the visual of the stunning 60s and how it tackles this theme of loss of reality by going to the dark world of spectacles, of fashion, of singing, of dancing, of whatever, of the arts, without, even though it follows the traditional story. And now let's go for the spoilers because, yeah, there is this big twist throughout the movie. Eloise sees the men who have slept with Sandy being ghostly apparitions and they hunt her and they try to tell her something. And it turns out to be, alright, there is this old man in a pub that looks exactly like a very old Matt Smith. And I was certain that it was Jack, Sandy's pimp and supposedly murderer. Only he was not. As I was expecting, Eloise to confront Jack about the murder of Sandy, was like, yes, this movie is very basic. And then turns out he's not Jack. And it turns out that the landlady that owns the house that Eloise is living in is Sandy, who murdered Jack, who murdered all her Johns, and buried them in the walls of the house. And their ghost, what Eloise is actually resonating with, are the ghosts of all those men trapped in the house. And it's a great twist, but the way that Alex, the landlady, is telling everything, I'm not sure. I was not that impressed with this part. It was, in retrospect, it was very well set up. All right, everything you need to know was there. I just didn't notice. I guess I'm dumb. I had little faith in this movie, but I don't know. I mean, I had vibes of like the scene in Hot Fuzz where the murders in Hot Fuzz are explained. I had this feeling I was watching this scene, but that scene in Hot Fuzz was comical perfection, and this one it was like, yeah, all right, whatever. And the way it's set up, you kind of see it coming. All right, it's very well set up. This movie is doing some things so well that they detract from it. All right, that's what I mean when I say it was safe. And then, of course, in the end, Alex realizes her mistake and dies in a fire with the house. And Alex and her boyfriend, and Eloise and her boyfriend escape. So yeah, there was a nice story a nice ending to it. The ending felt very wholesome for this movie, which was kind of a surprise. So yeah, that was it. I mean, I'm in a bit of two minds about the movie. That's it. I wanted something less safe, which contradicts what I was saying that Edgar Wright can actually take all those hipster indie favorite movies and make them work as a traditional story. I know, I'm not sure about it really. I know that I want to rewatch this movie again. I know that it was an experience to behold. I really liked it. It was the work of a very talented director who has a vision for what he's doing, and I enjoyed it a lot. And I feel like this was the movie he wanted to make. Instead of trying to, to be another Edgar Wright movie, he made the movie he wanted to make. And it's 100% Edgar Wright. Alright? It was just Edgar Wright trying to do something. He had a story and wanted to tell it. That's it. That's why I like him. He doesn't try to. He's real. Alright? So yeah, that was my review with the spoilers. I would love to hear your opinions about this movie. Have you watched it or not? And yes, if you are at this point, I have spoiled for you. So sorry. You should have watched it. I warned you, right? So thank you for watching and stay spooky.